Again, it just tells the story of it's the evil and the ugliness of people's hearts these days is everywhere.
This is Frankie Rose's Think Tank. Here's your host, Frankie Rose.
Hey guys, welcome to the Think Tank. Can you hear me okay? I don't know if my it was working properly. It was making a couple little sounds there. So we're going to look at part 8 of the Miller hearing for Ethan Crumbley. I can't believe how much information is actually in these videos and these presentations. Stuff I don't know exactly why it would not have shown or been shown in Jennifer's trial, because I don't know why wasn't that shown. I'm very curious. I know Ethan said he would not he'd plead the fifth if he was called, but the information that we're going to see and that we've seen in the last 7 parts of this Miller hearing, wow, it's stuff I had no clue. I had absolutely no clue that this stuff was happening behind the scenes. So let's check this out.
Your Honor, Calling People versus Ethan Crumbley, case number 2022-279-506-FC.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council. Appearances for the...
Why is he not moving? There we go.
Doctor, you're going to approach the witness stand. You're going to stand in the witness box, face my clerk to be sworn, sir. Thank you.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you swear or affirm the statements you're about to make to this court will be the whole truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat.
You may be seated, sir. Thank you. And sir, if you could please state your full name for the record and spell your last name.
Yes, it's Kenneth Arthur Romanowski, Romanowski.
Thank you. With that being said, sir, if you could please keep your voice up for me, I would greatly appreciate it.
Very good.
Thank you. Defense, your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Romanowski, can you tell me a little bit about your formal education, please?
Yes, I have a bachelor's, a master's, and a doctorate degree from the University of Michigan.
All of them are from University of Michigan?
Yes, they are.
And what is your bachelor degree in?
Bachelor's was in social sciences and history.
Did you have a specific major?
That was the major.
Social science?
Yes.
What about your master's?
The master's was guidance and counseling.
And your PhD?
Counseling and community agencies.
And pursuant to that and your employment, do you have any sort of state licensing?
Master social worker, but that needs to be renewed.
And are you a member of any professional associations? And if so, which ones?
Michigan Correction Organization and the American Corrections Association.
Can you tell us a little bit about your employment, please?
Yes, I started work in the corrections field as a juvenile care worker in a juvenile facility in 1975. Did that for about a year. Then I worked in a group home for juveniles. This is for juveniles being released from the boys training school, and also for boys that were coming into the system from other avenues. But most of these were troubled youth coming into the facility who had been in some form of detention. In 1979, I began working with the Department of Corrections. I was hired in as an agent in charge at a halfway house for offenders being released from prison. They were actually released on prison status, and they were stayed there for roughly a year or two while they found employment and maintained their family ties, and then they were finally released on the parole. And prior to that, after that, I went to work with the Genesee County probation office where I was a probation officer. And I did that for a few years. And then I went back to the correction center as agent in charge, as a supervisor, and then later as a manager of both the halfway house and the parole office in Genesee County.
And what positions have you held as a deputy or a warden?
Okay. Yes, I began working as a deputy warden at the Hiawatha Correctional Facility up in the Upper Peninsula. And I worked there for roughly 2 years, and I transferred over to the Kinross Correctional Facility. And this was from 93 through just about the year 2000, 2001. And after 8 years in the Upper Peninsula, I transferred back downstate, just a short period of time at Detroit, and then over to the Huron Men's Facility, which was in Ypsilanti. And since that time, I've worked at numerous different facilities throughout the state, probably 8 different correctional facilities.
And in your positions as deputy warden or warden, have you been involved in the management of prisoners who are referred to as juvenile lifers?
Yes, I have.
And do you have any sort of teaching experience?
Yes, I did. I taught with Siena Heights College.
And what did you teach?
I taught corrections, introduction to corrections.
And did you also teach with the University of Detroit?
Yes, prior to that, I taught corrections also for the University of Detroit.
Now, have you ever testified in a courtroom before?
Yes.
And have you ever been qualified as a witness? Or,
Yes.
I'm sorry, an expert?
Yes, I have.
And can you tell us where you've been qualified as an expert?
This would have been out of Kent County, Judge Trusock's court.
And how many times have you been qualified as an expert?
Twice. And the third time I was not necessary, settlement which we reached.
And those 2 times were both in Kent County?
Yes.
And would those have been both times involving cases where the issue was whether to sentence someone as a juvenile to life in prison without parole?
Actually, these were after the fact. These were offenders that actually been incarcerated for a lengthy period of time as juvenile lifers, and were looking at possible sentence reductions under the JWLLP.
Now, is it
I can't believe how much we are learning. It gives us such a better understanding why the parents were charged and what was going on in this kid's head and how some of these things weren't noticed.
there a certain theory or methodology you use for evaluating cases involving life without parole sentences?
Generally, I look at their entire record from the time they come into the system up to the time I'm doing the report. And I look at their misconduct history, what they've done since they were in prison. I look at what programs they're involved in, which of the core programs they completed for the Department of Corrections, what their education was, whether or not they completed their high school education while they're in prison. Looked at their employment. Did they maintain employment while they were in prison?
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to qualify Dr. Romanowski as an expert in corrections.
No objection, Your Honor. Thank you. This witness will be reflected as an expert in the area of corrections. You may proceed.
Now, Dr. Romanowski, this case is a little different, correct?
That is correct.
And could you describe how it's different?
Well, it's different in that the Miller hearing's being held before the person is sentenced, where the other ones I've worked with, and I've done reports, and I have several that are pending, probably about a dozen, have all been with the offender being having his Miller hearing after he was sentenced instead of prior.
And just kind of briefly, that's because Miller brought about a change in the law, correct?
Correct.
And so people that had been sentenced as juveniles to life without parole then had the opportunity to be released, correct?
Correct.
And in your work, are you familiar with the Miller factors?
Yes, for the most part.
In particular, you're familiar with the one involving rehabilitation. Would that be true?
Yes, potential for rehabilitation and maturity or immaturity of the offender.
Have you reviewed any sort of documents regarding Ethan Crumbley?
Yes, I have.
And what types of documents have you reviewed?
For the most part, the documents I reviewed were his jail records.
And is it customary for you to consider those types of records in your role as a witness?
Generally, when I'm considering those records, it's in addition to the Department of Corrections records. But in this case, all I had were the records from Oakland County Jail.
And have you ever met or interviewed Ethan Crumbley?
No, I have not.
And you don't know information as to some of the factors, for example, his home life or family environment, correct?
Only from what I read in the news.
Now, did you prepare a report in this matter?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, it's exhibit number J for the record. And do you have a copy of that report with you?
Yes, I did.
Now, Ethan is a juvenile placed in the county jail here in Oakland County, correct?
Correct.
What does that mean for him?
Well, what that means for him is obviously he's being considered as an adult for sentencing. And, that is part of it, but it's also the fact that, or the charges, I'm sorry, but it's also due to the fact that juvenile in an adult facility, so he has to be maintained under strict observation at all times. He has to be kept from any person over the age of 18. And part of this is the PREA, Prison Rape Elimination Action.
And we've heard with respect to Ethan, the phrase out of sight and sound. Can you explain what that means?
What that basically means is that you have to remain out of sight and sound of an adult offender. And if you are not, you have to be in direct supervision with a custody staff member.
Now, are you familiar with the Oakland County Jail, the physical structure?
No, I am not.
To your knowledge, do the county jails have cell blocks designated for juveniles that are placed there?
There may be some jails that do, but I'm not familiar if they are. I do know in this case here, he was placed in the clinic area.
Now, are you familiar with the term suicide watch?
Yes, I am.
And in reviewing your records regarding Ethan, has Ethan ever been on suicide watch?
Yes, several times when I was in the Oakland County Jail.
And what does suicide watch consist of?
It's basically direct observation. They're recorded every 15 minutes, but I believe they also put them on camera, so he's constantly under view of the staff member.
And is that a little bit different from something called active behavior watch?
Yes, it is, but the two, in terms of the amount of frequency of checks, are the same. They're every 15 minutes.
Is Ethan subject to active behavior watch?
He has been most of his time he's been in the jail.
Thank you, sweet misery.
And that means somebody's checking on him, you said, every 15 minutes?
That is correct.
And they do something to notate what they've checked or what they've observed?
Yes, that's on the active suicide watch sheet. And these are recorded every 15 minutes, plus whether or not he's standing, sitting, laying, whatever.
Do you know what commissary is?
Yes.
What is that?
Commissary is basically where you can order items for yourself if you have the funds to pay for them, such as snacks. And I think in Ethan's case, he ordered quite a few snacks out of the commissary, and that's why he wasn't eating his meals.
And that also involves hygiene items, correct?
Yes, it does. You buy soap, shampoo, deodorant.
Clothing such as socks and t-shirts?
I believe so.
Now, are you familiar with the term privilege as it's used in the jail or prison environment?
Yes, privileges in the jail and prison are going to be a little bit different, but I believe in his case, he was under administrative segregation type setting, and he was not released from his cell. So his privileges would have been basically his visits, his phone time, maybe his use of the tablet, which all the offenders have provided use of the tablet, and possibly his movies and his television.
Now, you just mentioned administrative segregation.
So that really doesn't sound like jail in any way, shape, or form. Eats all the junk food, so he doesn't eat his meals. He didn't eat. What did he just say he had?
Such as snacks. And I think in Ethan's case, he ordered quite a few snacks out of the commissary, and that's why he wasn't eating his meals.
And that also involves hygiene items, correct?
Yes, it does. You buy soap, shampoo, deodorant.
Clothing such as socks and t-shirts.
I believe so.
Now, are you familiar with the term privilege as it's used in the jail or prison environment?
Yes, privileges in the jail and prison are going to be a little bit different, but I believe in his case, he was under administrative segregation type setting, meaning he was not released from his cell. So his privileges would have been basically his visits, his phone time, maybe his use of the tablet, which all the offenders have provided use of the tablet, and possibly his movies and his television.
What, hey?
You just mentioned administrative
Whoa.
segregation. Does Ethan get to go outside? Does he have that opportunity?
I'm not sure if the jail has an outside pen or not, but if so, it would be under a caged area.
Does he get a recreation time if it's perhaps inside instead of
Yes,
outside?
I believe he does. Yes.
And do you know about how many times a week or how long?
I believe it's 1 hour per day.
And did you see any records where Ethan takes advantage or doesn't take advantage of that opportunity?
For the most part, he did not take advantage of it.
Now, those records you reviewed, do those also reflect that he was diagnosed with a mental illness?
I saw in the records where he was being seen by a psychiatrist, but I did not have any mental health records to review.
Okay. The records you reviewed, did they show that he was compliant with taking his medication?
Not always, but it looked like for the most part he was.
And more frequently than not, he took it?
I am guessing, again, this is based upon the suicide watch sheets. They'll note that. Also, the observation sheets will note that too. There's a box that they check if the meds are taken. In some cases, it was left blank, so either I assumed he was no longer on meds or they just didn't record it. But I would say about half and half.
Now, it doesn't say what the medication is or what it's for, though, correct?
No, it doesn't.
Now, you mentioned you noticed from the records he was participating in some sort of counseling.
Yes, he was in counseling with a therapist. He was seeing a therapist. Now, what kind of counseling he was in, I could tell you.
Did that increase or decrease in frequently or in frequency?
I believe he was seeing the psychiatrist once a week.
And he's consistently participated with that therapist, correct?
Yes, I don't think he's refused to see the psychiatrist.
Now, you mentioned he'd been on suicide watch several times. Is that a result of some sort of report that's been made about him experiencing suicidal thoughts?
Yes, those reports are found in the IMAX system. I'm not sure what IMAX stands for, but it's generally the find reports from the jail. The find reports are the incident reports that occur. And these are a little bit more detailed in terms of his behavior while he's in the jail. And there were several occasions where he had either done something towards self-harm, such as hitting his head into the wall or ramming his head into the door, or possible suicide behavior. There's one occasion where he was on his bunk with his shirt tied around the speaker and then his shirt tied to that, and it was believed he was trying to hang himself, but it says also that he said he was just trying to muffle the noise, and there was in fact a report maybe a week prior that he was trying to muffle the noise.
Now, you mentioned IMAX. Is that something you had access to as well?
Yes, I had those were the find results generally.
And in those records, did you see that he had been reporting hearing voices and being paranoid?
Yes, I did.
And what about any sort of indication of delusional behavior or paranoia before the incident?
Prior to the murders, he was in fact hearing voices, I believe, at his home. His parents had reported that he had some delusional behavior and he had some fear about staying in the home because of persons coming out of different rooms.
Now, you've mentioned
Okay, so the parents told them that they basically concerned about this, like they were taking this serious. Is that what he's saying? And then they still did nothing? I'm confused.
conduct Between November and December of 2021, were there any instances of misconduct that you found in the records?
No, there were not.
How about any misconduct in the entire year of 2022?
No, none that I noticed.
Did you notice any sort of misconduct in the year 2023?
Yes, I did. That's all the misconduct that I found was in those years.
And what types of misconduct was that?
Okay. The misconducts, by the way, all occurred within about a 3-month period from February through May of 23. And for the most part, the misconducts were what we call minor rule violations in Department of Corrections, but should be noted, the Oakland County Jail does refer to them as formal misconducts. These misconducts would include items, such things as making items out of toilet paper, which were dice, and then making a checkerboard to roll the dice, or a game board to roll the dice.
Oh, fun.
Another occasion, he in fact had his window that they look in, the deputies look into his cell, blocked with cardboard boxes and also trash bags. They were taken down, but he put them back up. So they just took him out of the room. There was another incident in which his password was given to another inmate so that inmate could make phone calls to his relatives. He'd obviously either used his or didn't have the credits for the phone calls.
Okay, so let me stop you there for a minute. As it relates to phone usage, you have to have some sort of credits. Does that cost money?
I believe it does in the county jail.
And you are assigned some sort of a number or password that you then put in the phone as you're making an outgoing call.
That is correct.
Obviously, you don't receive incoming calls, correct?
No, you do not receive incoming calls unless it's maybe from your attorney.
Now, have there been any instances where his cell wasn't as clean as the deputy thought it should be?
Probably most incidents.
And you mentioned that here in the county jail, they have a different significance than they do in the Department of Corrections, correct?
Yes, they're at a different level. These probably would correlate to a major misconduct in the county jail, whereas within the Department of Corrections, they would be minor misconducts or even violation of posted rules, which would be like a summary ticket.
Kind of like a speeding ticket instead
Yes.
of a misdemeanor.
Yes, and he did receive 3 misconducts for not having his room.
Now, when he's received
Not having his room
misconduct,
clean.
what sort of punishment has there been?
Loss of privileges.
And those would be the ability to use the tablet, watch TV, things like that.
Exactly.
And would loss of privileges also be the type of discipline he would be subject to in the Department of Corrections?
It would be very similar, except for he would probably have more privileges he could end up losing because he would have time out of his cell. There may be different activities or programs he could be attending, and he may not be able to attend depending upon whether or not it was recreational or personal program, or whether or not it was department required program.
Now, when somebody gets transferred from the jail to the Department of Corrections and they're a juvenile, do you expect to see, or has your experience been to see a number of misconducts?
Yes. Most offenders, when they come into the system, the Department of Corrections, especially the juveniles, will pick up a good series of tickets their first several years. In fact, may even be, depending upon what year they come in, but they will pick up tickets all the way till they're about 26, and then it's like somebody flips the switch. Those greatly decline at that point.
And based on your experience and your knowledge, is there a reason those individuals may have more tickets at the outset?
I believe in part is because they are coming in as immature individuals and they are learning to become adults and understand the responsibility and the consequences of those misconducts. Also, I think in many cases, the individuals are coming in as rebellious about being in prison. They're just realizing that they are not going to serve a long term. And when this hits home, they act out negatively. And in some cases, they'll do this too to show that try to show that they're a tough guy so that people don't mess with them by either being insolent towards staff or possibly even fighting with other inmates.
What a
And
life, eh?
I referred to a ticket. When you get a misconduct, the way you're notified of any sort of discipline is through something called a ticket. Would that be correct?
Yes, a ticket, misconduct, basically the same thing.
And I guess the easiest way to talk about what you were just saying is some people have kind of a bravado in getting tickets so they don't become prey in the system, correct?
That could be another reason too, yes. So they're not preyed upon, so they're, again, showing they're not to be messed with.
And in the review of the records you completed, were you able to tell whether Ethan has been participating in any sort of education programming?
Yes, I believe he was working on his high school education, his GED. He was working on it through the tablet. And I believe he paid for this himself, at least that's what the jail records show, that there was money that was put into his account, and that money was used to pay for the GED tablet. And there were 4 different courses he was taking toward taking his TABE, his test for adult basic education, prior to taking the GED.
And do you know how far he was able to go in that program?
Official records, no, but from what I understand is that he was able to get up to the point of taking the TAVE, the TABE, but it needs to be proctored as well as the GED needs to be proctored, and the jail was not able to accommodate the proctor.
Is that something the Department of Corrections can accommodate?
Oh, yes.
And is the GED programming, if you were to need to do review courses or something like that, available for juvenile lifers in the prison system?
Yes, that program is available for juvenile lifers. Certainly that's one of the major tasks that he'll be facing when he comes in, is completing that GED. That'll be part of his RNGC requirements.
Once Ethan is sentenced, what's the next step for him? Where does he go?
Once he's sentenced by this court, he will go immediately to the Thumb Correctional Facility, and that will be his intake process. Normally, offenders over 18 and over would go to RGC in Jackson, but in this case here, the RGC is at the Thumb for the youthful offenders.
So because of his age, he's treated slightly different than the normal prisoner, but the same as other prisoners of his age, correct?
Thank you,
Yeah, I would say
Maxie.
it's a slight difference. I mean, they do have them separate totally from any adults, except for classes where they have an officer
Sub up to Sweet Misery, you guys. She's in chat quite often. Let's support her as well.
with them.
So that's absence or apart from sight and sound carries forward into the Department of Corrections?
Definitely. Now,
Until what age?
that
Well
goes
said.
up at the age 18.
And at age 18, what changes?
Well, in his case, seeing how he's going to Lapeer to the Thumb, he may transfer over to the HIDA, the Homes Youthful Training Act section, which also has youth in it, but it's normally not youth that are under the same circumstances as the juvenile lifers or juvenile commissions of serious crimes. These are generally less serious crimes, but they have a separate section for them. But once he's 18, he may be housed with them. And that could be all the way up to age 27 in that particular program.
And once he's aged 18, he can be housed with other adults. Is that true?
Yes. And technically, he could be transferred to another adult facility.
But until he's 26, there's a tendency to keep them in facilities with people the same age. Is that correct?
Depending upon the behavior of the individual, their particular needs for programming, but normally not given a priority unless they come in as a youth.
Now, I think you mentioned in your report he would be classified. Can you explain what that is?
Classified, I probably was referring to security classification, and this is the level of security that he'd be maintained for the safety, security, prevention of escape, etc., in the Department of Corrections. And there are, in fact, 5 different levels of classification: Secure 1, level 1, which is non-secure level 1, which is similar to the old
Welcome, Sweet Misery. We're happy to have you. Nice. Welcome.
camp program, but we don't have camps. We still have non-secure facilities. Level 2 would be medium security. Level 3 is no longer used. And level 4 would be what they call close. That's one step away from the maximum security. Level 5 would be maximum security.
In each of those different security levels, obviously, have their own level of security at the facility, correct?
Yes, each facility has its own level of security. Some facilities are strictly for maximum security cases, and some are just for level 1 non-secure cases. In the case of the Thumb, that is a level 2 facility or medium security facility.
Now, are you familiar with the term rehabilitation?
Yes.
And what does that mean?
Well, I know it's been bantered around a bit as there is no such thing as rehabilitation. It starts with habilitation, but essentially it means offenders are changing by their involvement in programs, that their behavior is changing, and that they're becoming a better person.
Are there certain types of programs that you look at in rehabilitation, such as education, employment skills, things like that?
All those factors, plus therapy and treatment would also be included.
Is there programming for someone in Ethan's position within the Michigan Department of Corrections?
Yes, certainly.
Is there mandatory programming versus voluntary programming?
As a youth, he's going to be pretty much into a lot of mandatory programming. And we're coming in as a juvenile lifer. If he came in as a juvenile lifer, anyway, he comes in as a juvenile, he'll be subject to mandatory therapy. He'll have to go to at least every other week attending mental health treatment.
Any other type of programming?
There are other programming offered. Yes, he'll have the education programming. He'll either go back to ABE and work on completing his high school diploma or working on the GED. And that's something they'll work out with the principal. He'll be involved in different types of treatment programs. And I'm not talking about therapy here, but treatment programs could include, and will likely include, the assaultive offender program. This is a program that sometimes is difficult for people serving lengthy sentences to get into. He will also be involved in the violence protection or prevention program, or the VPP, violence prevention. He'll be involved in substance abuse if there's some indication he has a substance abuse history, which I don't recall seeing based upon the records I had. He will be reviewed for mental health treatment. Mental health treatment will, again, he will automatically be involved in mental health treatment, whether he agrees to it or not. That will be part of his treatment. But he will also be assessed to see.
You see, I agree with that. You can go two ways when something like this happens. You can follow like generations and generations have, or you can learn what not to be. And that's what I learned. My child, I mean, he's my heart. That's what he is. So parents that do this, I think it's abusive, because what the child has to go through is unreal. It is a form of abuse.
If he needs further or more in-depth mental health treatment, so he will receive a full psychological, psychiatric evaluation.
And if that indicates a greater need than every other week, would that service be provided in the Department of Corrections?
Yes, it would.
And would he be participating in any sort of like anger management or cognitive behavior programming?
Yes, there is anger management, and that is actually a program. They have a couple of different versions of it, but certainly that's something he would be referred to. Cognitive behavior.
100%, Dandy. Well said. Living in a constant state of fight or flight kept me in a heightened state. No one is designed to live out life like that. Absolutely. And it does change who you are. But, you know, fight or flight, like you said. I'm a fighter. I'm a fighter. I scratched my way out of that. I've scratched my way out of a lot of things. And it's sink or swim. So we need to swim, right?
Programs too, they are there, CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, where he's able to examine his behavior and his thoughts, what got him into that behavior to begin with. So yes, these would be programs. Impulse control would be another one he may qualify for. This would all be based upon the referral from the psychiatrist.
Now, are there sorts of voluntary programs he can participate in?
Yes.
And what types of programs would those be?
Well, there are community-based programs that come in, which include religious services, which many offenders do participate in. And the religious services usually have a wide variety of programs they're offering in addition to just a weekly religious service. They'll have weekly meetings or even additional Bible study meetings or Quran, whatever it may be.
I believe that Ethan is a mental mess at this point. And the fact that a child who is, I don't know if they have given him any kind of idea what's going on with him, but you add mental illness to parents that are selfish and don't give a shite, that's going to go sideways fast. They need someone to look up to and proper guidance. That's what children need. To see people that are neglected and bullied and all these different things that happen now, this is what we're getting. Our kids are a mess nowadays.
That will go on from that point. There are groups such as Chance for Life. Chance for Life is a group that works with offenders serving long sentences, especially the younger offenders. And they are mentored by older offenders that have been in the program. And the intent there is to help the person become acclimated to prison and to understand what they need to do while they're in the system. And this program has been very successful. A lot of the youth that have been paroled by the Department of Corrections under the Miller have been involved in the Chance for Life.
As mentors or as participants?
Well, they had been participants, but by the time they were paroled, I'm sure they were mentors.
Now, what sorts of educational opportunities beyond high school are there in the Department of Corrections?
Well, until recently, that was basically it. And that was because of the law that indicated that offenders could no longer qualify for Pell Grants. But there are other grants. Generally, these are private grants that have been made available to the offenders so that they can continue their education in college.
So he has the opportunity to attend college classes in the Department of Corrections?
He will.
And we were speaking about mental health, the treatment. Is there medication involved if his mental health diagnosis requires some sort of medication?
Yes, there will probably be psychotropic medication.
And is that medication supervised?
Yes. It's the medication's given out at the med line. The med line has an officer that watches the offender. The nurse also watches the offender as the medication is handed to him. And he has to put it in his mouth, drink it with water, and then do a tongue check to make sure it was swallowed.
What about employment opportunities? Are there any employment opportunities for someone in his position?
When he first gets in, he's going to be limited to employment in the youth housing. And that will probably be as a porter, assistance in serving food, or groundskeeper, maintenance type positions, cleaning positions, all right in the housing, the youth housing.
And that would be because of his age being under 18?
Yes, that is correct.
And are those same opportunities available once he turns 18?
Well, if he stays in the youth section, again, with the HIDA, he probably will have that same kind of employment. If he's put into the GP, which he would qualify for, the general population, then he'd have more different possibilities for jobs. His jobs could include working as a clerk in the library. It could be working as a student assistant. It could be working on the grounds, much bigger grounds, obviously, in the general population. Could be working with the maintenance department. I could be working in the laundry, the commissary. So there are many different places he could work.
Now, are there any sort of risk assessment tools used in the Michigan Department of Corrections?
Yes, there are several different risk assessment tools.
And could you describe those?
We already went through one of them, which is his classification, security classification. But in addition, there is the kind of almost out of practice use, but the risk assessment and the property assessment tools, which are just basically looking at his offense, his age of first offense, and any serious misconduct he may have picked up in the institution. And then there's the property offense, which looks at those same factors, but these two factors generally do not coincide with one another. They may. He just my personal review of the file for what I have known about his background in the offense, he would probably go in as what they call a medium assault risk. And if you were to pick up serious institutional misconduct, he'd be made a high assault risk.
And are those risk assessment tools used continuously?
They are, but not as much as they used to be. Matter of fact, even on the security classification screen, they still have a spot for the high of the property risk. The risk assessment.
So is it a tool that's used to place somebody within a facility within the Department of Corrections?
When you're being placed at any facility prior to transfer or even within the facility itself, there's always rescreening under the security risk classification, at least annually or upon transfer, or if there's a change, if he were to pick up several serious misconducts, that could change his security risk classification also.
Now, you've mentioned you've participated before in reviews of sentences of people who were previously sentenced of life without parole. In those cases, have some of them been resentenced to life without parole?
Yes, they have.
And in some of those cases, have they been sentenced to a term of years?
Yes, they have. As a matter of fact, the two were both terms of years.
And based on your experiences as a warden, deputy warden, and in of being a witness, have you done any research about the recidivism rates for people released after initially being sentenced to life without parole?
Yes, Montclair College did a study on juvenile lifers that were released, and this was done in Pennsylvania.
So, guys, I am wondering what to do here. They're giving the update in a minute about the guy that, the reason they had the SWAT team out yesterday, the guy that was in his house, there was a couple police officers that were unalived, as well as one medic. So, you know what? I was going to set up another stream for this, but would you guys like me to add this on? Like, would you like me to, let's see here. Do you want me to stream it in here? Would you guys like to see that? Let's go, and we can always watch this. I still don't know what's happened. Okay, guys. So what I'm going to do is stop this stream, and I'll start up the other one. So thank you very much for being here, and we will pop over there. Bye for now, friends.